cool.
Yeah, this is great. By the way, P.S. I just want to say, as a person who absolutely abhors small talk, this has been fantastic. So a little small talk at the end is welcome. I am the worst person at a party because I want to go deep all the time. So thank you for being that type of, I can't, like I cannot with the small talk. So thank you.
Hey, this is Kara. You're watching Really Famous, where you really get to know your favorite celebrities on a totally different level because I was a therapist and that's how I roll. Right now, you're going to get to know Lisa Lampanelli. You may remember her stand-up act, but she's retired now and like a totally different person, and we get into some really deep things and some surprising factoids. And wait till you see what we crack up about towards the end. Here we go.
I didn't learn posture when I was a kid. So, I mean, I think this is as good as we can get.
I can't tell that you have bad posture looking at you from this angle.
Oh my God. Well, if you saw me do a turtle, you'd say yes.
And you're
Yeah,
Connecticut?
cool. Yes, yes. I recently bought my mother's house because I had always, it was the house I grew up in. And just, I've moved like 40 times in 40 years. And ever since college. And I was like, I noticed I never changed my phone number in my mother's phone number to anything that said except home. And I was like, I didn't change that because I knew that's where I was going to end up. So I was like so happy that she, worked, and we all worked it out to like, so I could buy the house.
So you always felt like that, or maybe you knew in the back of your mind that that
Oh
was your
yeah.
spot. So
Yeah.
that's so
Well, what I love
interesting.
is it is right. Like I love the whole compulsion to achieve and that achievement. I mean, I'm saying that sarcastic. I hate it because it's like achievement means going out on your own, which yes, it does. I mean, if you're 25 and still living at home with your parents, like you have to kind of assess, let's get going here, batch. So, but that achieve did not mean moving back. It meant like buying big houses and being, just sort of goal oriented. And now it's like, oh my God, I just get to listen to that thing down there.
Well, yeah, that is good. But so you were
Yeah,
always goal oriented, I guess, your whole life?
I think so. And what's weird is I always say to my brother and sister, how did we get so type A and so goal oriented when mom and dad really weren't? Like they were definitely earned livings, definitely put us through college and felt they owed that to us, which I don't know why they thought they owed that to us, but I guess that's how they grew up.
Mhm.
And like one day I got my mail and the student loans had been paid. And back then I couldn't believe my parents did that. So I think certainly they wouldn't have paid for more than 4 years, but I think they felt, well, we kind of owe you that. But they never were focused on us achieving or them achieving. But I think it was just trying to get approval, trying to get attention, trying to get, something that you weren't getting in your childhood. I mean, that's what I think all compulsion like stems from. So yeah, it gets you a great career like I had, thank God.
Yeah.
But now here's 30 more years to figure out, well, what really fills me up without that thing.
Right. So that's so interesting. So I was a therapist before. So that intrigues me.
Oh,
I'm
goody.
into that. Like, yes, a
Yes,
lot
girl.
childhood. A
Yeah. Oh,
lot.
it's all that. And my shrink says, and you love this because you clearly, have training. She goes, no one had the parents they deserved. And meaning even the best parents had to turn away for a second to turn down the stove at this, and it might have hit you at just the moment you needed them the most. So she's like, no one had perfect parents. So it's about us going, okay, let's see what we develop then that we need to develop real resilience. Because I was saying to a friend the other day, resilience is like something I thought I had because I was so compelled to be famous, not even famous, but just good at comedy and get
Yeah.
accolades and stuff like that and achieve. And to like show my parents that, oh my God, look, I did this all by myself and
Hmm.
be proud of me, be proud of me. But I think the difference is I didn't have resilience in rolling with real life. So I had
Okay.
anger, I had too much, outward emotion, crazy stuff that like you just go, oh, food addiction, obviously, and codependency and stuff like that. So you're like, oh, okay, now I can develop actual resilience for daily life because I'm not just compelled to do this career. It's very interesting stuff. I've anything that smacks of achievement now, I don't do. Like I just go, no. If the goal is fun, and I don't mean fun like people would think, just fun and peace. And what's fun for me is not fun for everybody. They think it was so boring. But I'm like, oh, I can actually develop a life now. And I'm sad that it took so long. But I'm like, okay, well, I guess we got 30 years. I mean, I think I've got 30. I mean, I'm kind of in great health and nailing it.
I think more than 30, I'm going to say that. But okay, I want to pull this apart a little bit more. It's very
Yeah,
interesting.
sure.
So you had different stages of your life. So let's get back to your childhood. You said,
Yeah.
so you and your siblings are all type A. So who are your siblings? Do you have a where do you
I
fit?
have an older sister, younger brother, and I think they say a lot of comedians and performers are middle children. So that whole like need for attention, that whole like we as middle children, I could disappear for hours, and my parents would be like, "Where's Lisa?" "Oh, she's upstairs reading a book." Like I loved reading books, and I loved horses, and I loved like all that stuff. Hi, oh my God! Speaking of
Who do we
animals,
have?
here's one of them,
Oh,
Parker.
cute. Hi,
He's my
Parker.
I have two rescue dogs and he's completely freaking idiotic, but I love him. Okay, go down.
Oh my
We're
God, it looks
really
so cute.
famous.
And the
Oh, I
camera
can't.
angle, like he's all looking at the camera and stuff. It's perfect. It's adorable.
He's been on stage. He was in one of my 1 hour specials. But yeah, I think so I'm in the middle. And again, I never felt like truly ignored, but there probably was some kind of message like, where do I fit in? I mean, even now, I'm like literally have my toe in about 4 different groups of friends. And I'm like, where do I really fit in? Like, when am I going to be the first person somebody calls? Because I don't date and I don't have any, hatred of men or bitterness. I just kind of, it's not for me. And I'm like, I wonder what that feels like to be the first person somebody calls about something. And it used to be my parents, but now they're gone. And it's like, oh, okay, I can't develop friendships with that in mind to be the first thought, like I wished it was in childhood. But I can at least develop relationships that someday may lead to these very interesting, cool friends who go, oh, I'm going to call Lisa and tell her about that. I'm so happy with my whatever, dot, dot,
Yeah,
dot.
yeah. Yeah, I don't think you can set out to have that as your goal, but I get it
100%.
that is the goal. But that's the goal, really,
Of
right? To
course.
have
Of
that kind
course.
of connection with somebody that they think of you right away and they want to come to you with whatever it is that's going on. So I
Well,
guess,
one
so
with yes, you're right. You're right. What's interesting about that, I do have one friend who I know I'm the first person, other than her husband. Actually, she tells me probably more kind of the deeper stuff that women talk about and that people working on themselves talk about than she does her husband. I always feel like, oh, she's going to call me first, and she does, and I do the same thing. But she lives far away, so then I have that. I go to because of my upbringing, I go to lack. Oh, but she's not here, so like it doesn't count because it's long distance. It doesn't count because
uh,
you can't have coffee every day. So we have that false construct of best friend, and it's so rooted in ownership, and like, oh my God, that person can't let me down because I own them. And it's like, okay, I just have to take it down a notch, not panic, and go, this is a person who like literally calls you first and you call her first. So chill out. Stop going to
yeah.
lack.
Yeah, that's because you have to change the narrative inside your brain.
Oh my God. And after 60 years of the same one, it's hard.
Yeah, and it's so deeply embedded, like it's not so easy to just change it. But if you're
No,
aware of it, that's really the first step. So if you realize,
sure.
oh, so I have this self narrative and I'm going to change it. So then there's a determination to change it. Boom, you've got it over time.
Right. And it's so interesting because I'm arguing with myself all day long. And I think that's why food addiction, by the way, is the hardest addiction to kick, in my opinion, is because it starts when we're less than 1 minute old. Like you have to eat since you're 1 minute old. So I was able to kick like other things like codependency and, serial monogamy, things like that, because I didn't date till I was 12. You know what I mean? I had 12 years without a guy. Food, oh my God, it's primal. So just like you're saying, this is all these narratives in your head that are rooted since day one.
Yeah. So, okay, so a lot of this started in childhood, like what you are learning about yourself.
Mhm.
And so it wasn't so bad necessarily, but it was that
No.
you weren't the first one necessarily because you were in the middle, do you think?
Yeah. Yep.
Yes. Okay.
And it was also, then you got the little brother who's so cute. Had only my brother been born ugly, but it's just like he was so cute. And he was, and we didn't have a typical Italian family. We didn't speak Italian. It wasn't like, oh, Italian only son, like that kind of vibe. It was more like, because I always say our family's Italian, but we pretended to be white. You know what I mean? Like nobody was like saying Maron and stuff like that. Like we were very white. So I think the brother comes, he's so cute. And we're just like, me and my sister are like so engaged with him. We're just like, oh my God, he's the best. And then you just are kind of, well, where am I? So I don't think you even know it. You just try different things to fit in. And maybe part of that disappearing act into the room reading is part of the who's going to come and find me without even knowing it.
Yeah,
It's very
interesting.
strange. So I always say my childhood was not terrible. I would tell you if it was, believe me, I'd be able to write a much better book than my non-bestseller and very much more compelling, but it wasn't perfect. Of nobody's is, I don't think. Even
Yeah.
people, I think, who think it is, we could probably, me and you could figure out what was wrong with them.
Right. Which that could be fun, actually. That could be like a different podcast in and of itself, just like
Oh, yes. Have
figuring it
perfect
out.
people call in and we'll say, no, we'll read you, honey.
That's right. Then we have to hang up with them, of course, and then talk about it amongst ourselves.
Guaranteed.
So, okay, so then I guess that's probably the comedy thing, right? I mean, I feel like you've already talked about this probably a million times over, but is that how that started for you? Is like, oh, I people seem to be responding to me when I'm funny.
Well, I think it was an accident at first because I remember I put this in my book years ago. God, that book was like 10 something years ago, 15 maybe. And it was a story about, we were at my Aunt Rose's house, who was my favorite. She wasn't my aunt, she was my dad's aunt, but she was the best. And I made a joke and they all laughed. I must have been like 8. Well, of course, being me, I don't know the rules of comedy yet. So I milk it and say it again. And they all just stared at me like, girl, you only get to say it once. So, but that little taste of laughter. And I remember too, I've been to like food rehab. I've been to food workshops. I've been to codependency rehab. Like I've worked on myself. Like I've literally can't think of anything I haven't done. And in codependency rehab, we had this thing where they talked about in the family Atom, where you figure out what your role was in the family. And mine was the mascot, not necessarily that you were the cheerleader or whatever, but I was able to make my mother lighten up when no one else could. Like I could say stuff that she literally would start cracking up, whereas if my brother and sister said it, they would have got a smack or a punishment. So I think that all started brewing till when I was 30 and I was like in journalism. And I said to a friend there, I worked at Rolling Stone as a researcher. And I said to this guy, I'll never forget it, Steve Futterman, he was so funny in the research department. I said, Steve, I always wanted to do stand-up comedy, but I'm afraid. And he goes, don't do that. It's horrible. You get all the attentions on you and it's self-centered. I go, sounds perfect. So I was like, this is for me. So I think I had told Dr. Drew this after I retired. I think comedy was just a way to connect. It literally was just like where some people teach or some people are shrinks or some people are whatever they are. It's just was, oh my God, this is a way I connect with people. This is a way I can like make people pay attention to me and I pay attention to them, which is no doubt how it led to so much crowd interaction and not just standing up there with a mic with perfect jokes.
Right. And that was definitely more of your thing because you needed that or you wanted that connection more. That makes a
Oh,
ton of
yes.
sense. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you were a researcher at Rolling Stone?
Well, I was actually a writer for a lot of magazines and newspapers. I went to Syracuse for news. At the time, there was a major called newspaper journalism. So I just wanted to be a features writer. I wanted to write stories about rock bands because I wanted to meet all my heroes and stuff. Like I I wasn't a nerd, but I was like into nerdy rock, like Jethro Tull and Rush and, Yes, and all those progressive rock bands. So I wanted to meet all those guys. And not because I, like them physically or as sexual objects. I just was like, oh my God, I want to listen to them and hear about them. And they're so interesting. So I worked for, I was managing editor at this magazine called Hit Parader, which was a heavy metal magazine. I worked at Rolling Stone as an assistant first and then a researcher. I worked at Spy Magazine when it was a startup. So I had like a really good resume in newspaper. I went to Harvard for this summer program in publishing. And then I was like, oh, this is definitely, I'm never going to be great at this. I'm a good writer. I guarantee you, my book is really good. And I just know how to write. I'm really good at it. But I go, I'm never going to be Tom Wolfe. I'm never going to be a genius at this. And I could not figure out what to do instead. And that's this thing I've been putting off about comedy sort of came up. And I was lucky enough to have it kind of roll and be better and better every time.
So why did you feel like you had to be like Tom Wolfe? And how did you know that you were never going to
Exactly.
be?
I knew because I think you need the rawest, greatest. I think we all know what our limits are because no, I really disagree. Peggy, that's my dog eating a plant. Stop it. She's dumb. She's a little. Uh, I don't agree with you. You can be anything you want to. No, we all have like limits. We all are not geniuses. I could not be a doctor. I'm telling you right now, I don't care how much I like studied or had tutors. I could not be a lawyer. I could not be a doctor. I think I love my niece had a profound awareness even in her 20s. She's in her 20s and she had gone to college for dance. And then she worked at a casting office in New York and doing auditions. And she kept getting callbacks for touring companies. And they repped, Broadway talent. And she goes, I just saw that they're not getting work. I don't even have a tenth what they have. So it's something I'm going to have fun with and dabble in, but this is not my career. So I'm the same thing with writing. And it took me, I guess I was in my 20s when I realized that. I go, I'm not going to be him. I don't have the passion to pursue it as much if you need to kind of try to be that. So I said, okay, without the passion and without the real raw talent, I think it's like, okay, I really think comedy's something I should try. And hey, if I suck at it, that's okay. I'll quit.
Yeah.
I always had this fearless thing about, so I'll type. I literally, when I retired from comedy, when I was like 57, I was like, what's the worst that can happen? Somebody steals all my money and that I've saved and I type. I type 120 words a minute. I'll live, so I think the fearlessness is good. And that's fearless career wise, not fearless in life. Believe me.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Right.
Oh,
Okay. So
honey.
go ahead. What are you going to say
No,
after
I was going to say, I never take physical risks. I am literally will never skydive, will never bungee jump, I hardly run. Like I will never take a physical risk. I take a lot of emotional risks, but I don't take risks like in a sort of I need to challenge my body to do this mountain or whatever. I'm like, I'm going to fall off that mountain and die. Like I'm going to try to live as long as I can if I can still walk and have my mind.
So that's just physical. Then so you
Yeah.
are a risk taker or fearless. You said emotionally.
I wouldn't say fearless because I don't know anyone who is, even if they're famous for that. I
Uh-huh.
think I try to every day be less fearful than the day before. So
Okay.
for instance, we're taping on a Tuesday. Say on Sunday, I didn't tell a friend the truth about hurting my feelings. I would maybe try the next day to go, why didn't I hold back? What's the worst that can happen? Because I always think, what's the worst that can happen and what's the best that can happen? And it's usually somewhere in between. Like it's usually not the best or the worst. So in my experience, so if I tell this person they hurt my feelings, the worst thing that could happen is they're like, well, F you, we're not friends anymore, you sensitive, whatever. Best thing that can happen, oh my God, hug it out. Now we're best friends and everything is right with the world. And so I just try to be a little less fearful every day because it's going to fall somewhere in between that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I
Yeah.
think that, but I'm definitely not fearless. every day. That's hard.
Mm-hmm. Sure,
No,
it is hard.
some days when I'm even doing like ballroom dance, my instructor's a gay guy, and I sometimes even find it hard to look in his eyes. That's hard. Looking in people's eyes is freaking hard. And on this podcast that I'm doing now, which I'm shamelessly plugging, with two, it's a podcast with two straight guys called Losers with a Dream. And what's wild is straight guys with who talk about their feelings, I am very interested in because I do not see that a lot. And the other day I challenged them. We did a episode on vulnerability. So as their like life coach and mentor, I come on and I make them do challenges or make them like stretch or whatever. And I said to them, okay, now at the end of the show, we have to do a thing where we each give each other a really sincere compliment. And we're all comics or former comics. We cannot make a joke and we can't laugh and we have to look in each other's eyes. Dude, I got two straight guys to do this. It was so, we all cried. Like I knew I would like tear up because I'm a big puss now. And which by the way, it's demeaning. I'm sorry, but I'm like a softie now. And they teared up and I was so impressed. So that's hard, man. Just the act of staring somebody in the eyes is hard because it's vulnerable, it's exposing. So I think that's, yes, I was vulnerable on stage to a certain extent because you're exposed on a stage. But I mean, wow, you have the mic and the power still. It's kind of more easy to be vulnerable, So
Yeah.
now it's like, oh, shoot, I have to really look at people in the eyes, like the grocery clerk or the guys on the show or whatever. We got to do it. And it helps me be a little less fearful.
Right. I guess when you're on stage, you're not really looking anybody in the eye, right? You have the eyes on
I
you.
did. Well, I did a lot because of crowd work. I was my act was literally 80% like, hey man, da 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 da, and insults and this going back and forth. But you're not truly vulnerable because you ultimately do have the power. I
Right.
ultimately could be like, you want to answer my question or get the F out, which usually didn't happen. But like, so I think when you're equals, like even on the podcast, like they're not beginning comics, but they're like 2 years in. I'm this veteran. I'm this, I call myself the retired legend on their show. And I'm like, okay, I could have the power still because I'm the legend, quote unquote. But guess what? I got to put myself on equal footing. We each have a mic. I can't overrun you. That's like a lot harder because I have to like really be real and kind of not show off and not big shot and not overwhelm them. So it's a very good practice for me because it's helping me train for real life.
Yeah. I think, in my experience, listening to podcasts, I
Mm-hmm.
think comedians, it's the biggest challenge in a way for them to not be funny. And so
Yep.
this is, I mean, I'm going to give away how I really feel about certain things, but there are some podcasts, especially if they're hosted by a comedian, if
Yep.
they have a comedian on as a guest, it's almost
Horrible.
impossible to listen to. And I think there
Yes.
must be that pressure from both of them to be funny. And it's just something,
Oh,
I don't know. But then I think to myself, well, okay, all right, I'm going to just lay it out and say, give me an example because I'll
yeah.
just be real. So Conan
Sure.
O'Brien has a podcast and he's obviously a
Mm,
comedian. So
right.
a lot of the time he's trying to be funny. And I get that because that's what he does and that's who he is.
Sure.
But
Sure.
he's had some guests who I believe he had Stephen Colbert on once. I was
Hmm.
thinking about this
Hmm.
the other day. I was thinking, I think it was Conan. They had the greatest conversation. It was so real and it was so
Yes.
raw. And Stephen Colbert was just so authentic and honest and open about his life and the struggles he's had. And it was with
Hmm.
Conan O'Brien, which almost never happens if Conan has a comedian on. I have to turn off most of his episodes because it's
Right.
so
Right.
much of this trying to be funny routine that it just is hard for me personally to listen to.
Well, it's interesting because that's why I love Howard Stern and his evolution because his interviews are genius and he's not proving himself, quote unquote, trying to prove himself anymore. And that's why I like the podcast I do now because I go to them. We have a planning meeting the day before. I go, I want you to write down incidences of whatever the subject matter is, the main subtopic for the show, and it cannot be funny. if it leads towards like things that, you know, a little funny line here or there, because it is really funny, I go, that's fine. But
Yes,
the
that's totally
incident,
fine.
yep, the incident, it can't be forced ever. And I did say to them, I said, we're not doing this is not a comedy podcast. This is two straight guys who literally are trying to show the world that men have feelings too. And yes, nobody's feeling sorry for straight guys right now. I don't either. I don't feel sorry for anybody. But the fact is, there are layers to people, and you can show that side of what makes somebody human. So I think with comics, though, I've always found comics hard to listen to. I don't watch stand up. I never do, unless it's something spectacularly different, like Hannah Gadsby or something, Bo Burnham, like things that where you go, I'm crying. Like I'm literally, they're so vulnerable. I'm in tears. First of all, when I was in comedy, it felt like homework. And I was like, I got to get away from this the days I'm not doing it. But now I'm just not interested. But I will say, Nikki Glazer had me on a couple times on hers, and with me, I think because she was I was an inspiration to her. So she says, we get really real about like eating problems, eating disorders, food, you know, codependency, all that stuff. And I'm like, oh wow, she really keeps it real. So I love that about her. So some of them I think you have to dig through though, because I don't have that much time or patience to bother with it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's great when it happens and you're not expecting it to happen, like in terms of the being so real. I just
Yes.
love that. And as I said, that Stephen Colbert episode was so special. It was really so good. But I do think
Yeah.
that's a challenge. So congratulations that you're pulling that off
Yes.
on the podcast.
Yeah. Like I have no interest in, I mean, look, I cannot do anything. I don't think I could ever do anything without being entertaining or humorous. Like, I don't mean funny. I mean, I'm just an engaging person. Like, I'm not dull. So I have to just trust it. And nothing has to be forced. Nothing has to be sort of like pounded in. Oh, look. And I understand these comics, so who have these podcasts and the desperation of selling the tickets and making the theater full and, you know, selling out the Club 7 shows. That gets to you. You're like, put your brand out there and be funny. But that's what I had to do for 30 years. I'm like, oh my God, I don't have to do that anymore. Oh
Yeah,
my
what a
God, I'm so
relief, right?
glad. Thank you, God. I mean, the pressure of selling tickets is literally, I mean, it's the worst because
Really?
you're
And it's constant,
always
right?
horrifying. And the thing is, at first, it's pretty easy when you hit big. Like I remember the Pam Anderson roast came out, and I had just been doing clubs, you know, selling pretty well. You know, I'm not really well known that much, even though I had a few TV things. But that Pam Anderson roast aired, and I walked up to that club in Sacramento, and I was like, "Oh, okay, like here I am." And they're like, "Oh, is it okay if we had a third show Saturday and a fourth show or third show on Sunday?" I go, "Why? Who's here?" And they go, "The Pam Anderson roast aired, and it's sold the f out." And I go, "Get out of here!" So I it accidentally happened by doing a good job on that roast. But then after about 10 years, I had 10 years where I didn't even worry about anything. I mean, yeah, I promoted. I was always on the radio. I always went the extra mile because my theory was always go on the radio to promote if they want you to come on, if somebody requests you, because you never know when you'll need them again. Even though you're sold out, have the respect for the radio personality to go on, do your job and say, hey, we're sold out, but I love you guys.
Yeah.
So I always had that thing of like, I may need them later, which paid off because I did need them later. I'm like, oh my God, this is getting tiring.
Well, how do you even sell them though? But how do you, what do you, how do you, what? How do you do it if you're not?
If you're famous, it's okay. Like after Pam Anderson, it was all over. Like I was on TV constantly. I did 13 Tonight shows. I did all the roasts. I did 5 comedy specials. I was on Howard Stern a lot. That really helps. And it kind of is gliding along. But then social media came and I did not jump on board because I'm not the age who really does that. And I let that opportunity slip by. So was it a mistake? Probably not, because I'm where I'm supposed to be now. But had I done that thing where I'm really into social media and I'm like, get social media managers and all this and jump through hoops and do YouTube and all that, I probably wouldn't have had a hard time really pushing tickets the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I'm not willing to do that. Not
Right. Well,
because
you
I'm
were
like
no longer
adverse
wanted
to,
to. Yeah.
yeah, I'm also not adverse to social media. I mean, I think it's terrible, but at the time I wasn't like, oh no, this is bad for the universe. I just was like, oh my God, another fucking thing I have to do. Like, is it ever going to end? Am I ever good enough? And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. I am good enough to just have a life and to just kind of relax.
Right. Oh,
Relaxing is hard, dude. Like when you got no goals with a capital G, it's a shift and I'm still working on it. Goals with a small G, that's hard to wrap your head around, that it's okay to just live that way. And so that's
uh-huh.
what I'm in the throes of now because all my goals now have small G's.
Okay. So this is since retirement. So you decided to retire. This was a few
Yeah.
years ago. And like
Yeah.
definitely like a line was drawn. I am retiring, not a just
Yep.
ease out or anything like that.
Oh
And
no.
I mean,
Done.
you're done. So also your look is so different now. Like
Right.
how you looked before versus
Mhm.
now, like the whole now it would be called a brand, I guess, right? And
I
social media.
guess.
I guess it
Yeah.
would. It's like they're really two different, very market segments, I would say, of your life, really. So the before
Yeah.
retirement
Yeah.
and after retirement. So
Well, in all fairness, I had lost all the weight and had the haircut and colors and things before I retired. But I think that weight loss surgery and the keeping the weight off and all that stuff, that if I look back and I go, huh, when I hit 50, I was like, oh yeah, this is, I didn't consciously know it was the start of a different person and a different part of my life and leading to retirement. But that probably was the beginning of like, oh God, I don't need this anymore.
so
I don't need it for self esteem anymore. And
mm,
that's the difference. It's like I can get self esteem from helping these guys with the podcast with no capital G goal attached. I can, help my mom, before she passed. I can help her at the nursing home and all that without a capital G. So nothing now has that pressure and that craziness attached because I always go, haven't, like I used to go, haven't I done enough? It's like, yeah, yeah, I have. I mean, I think we all have, even if we've
yeah.
achieved nothing people would say is spectacular.
Yeah. So was there something going on in your personal life at the time that made this shift start, even though it took years to really change things?
I think it took getting the weight off for me. And again, because I'm a victim of diet culture, and in my day, we didn't have body positivity role models. I mean, thin was the only thing you could be. And just, I mean, it was so depressing and debilitating that I was like, I got to get this thing out of the way
But you
before I
looked
kind
good
of,
though. But you looked
it didn't
good.
matter. Nobody cares. No one cares. Look at poor Valerie Bertinelli. The woman gains maybe 20 pounds during COVID, and she had this huge breakdown last week about it and went on social media about it. And I was like, yes, girl. Um, it doesn't matter how good you look or how much you try to put, your best foot forward. Because yeah, definitely you're getting dresses made for $5,000 each because you're plus size, but there's nothing that's attractive for a red carpet. Your hair and makeup is 5 hours. Your hair extensions are $5,000 every 6 months. Like I did it, but then I'm like still being made fun of. So like, and it really isn't even about being made fun of. It's about the internal self-hate of knowing that I can't do anything about this. I've tried everything since I was age 18 to 50 and finally looked in the mirror and I was like, you know what? In order to stop this cycle of being depressed about this, let's get this out of the way so I don't hate myself for that. And let's work on the stuff I really hate myself for that I can really work on, which is the achievement and the skipping of family functions for comedy. I even said to my sister like a couple months ago, I'm really sorry I missed so much stuff because I was on the road. And she was like, oh my God, you didn't miss anything. And I'm like, I remember like one or two things. And she's like, in 20 years, but you still feel like you're a dick.
So was
So
that so that was something you were putting on yourself then, it seems like.
I still do. Like I always go, I wasn't really there for them.
But
And,
they
you know,
didn't feel
was
that
I,
way?
she says she didn't. I mean, I still have guilt. I still have, which is unearned probably because it's what did I really do wrong? Go and make a living, you know, but I think, it's a lot of pressure too on women because we're like, oh, I wasn't there every minute for my dad or my
Yeah.
mom. Well, like a guy usually doesn't have that pressure unless he's gay and he's the gay son taking care of, you know, like all the stereotypes are come from somewhere. Like it's always the gay son and the woman who takes care of the parents, you know. And I was lucky because I have a brother and sister who were equal in all that. But yet I took on, oh my God, why didn't I do more for mom and dad? Or why wasn't I there for every birthday instead of 80%, you know, for the kids or whatever, the grandkids and all that stuff. So it's
So what
really,
you
it's just
hate,
interesting.
yeah, what you hated yourself for then, you said was the achievement, but it was really the fact that the achievement made you what you thought was absent. Or
Right.
was there
And less,
another
and
aspect of it?
I think less than present sometimes when you're even there.
Uh-huh.
So you can be there, but be answering emails, not even just physically on your phone, because at the time we didn't have the phones with everything on it,
Yeah.
but like going, oh my God, I'm supposed to hear from so and so about that gig, or I'm supposed to be on the phone. I got to go upstairs and call the radio station to promote Orlando or whatever the F it is.
Yeah.
And it's just freaking overwhelming. And also, I think a lot of it is like comedy is, unless you like start figuring out that you are getting from that what you might want to look for in real life connection, that you're not fully living. So I think I'm
Okay.
living way more fully these past few years, and especially now, than that, because that's one note. If you're not single minded, I don't know how anyone's a success and um, has kids in comedy. And I think it's usually men who have a
Uh-huh.
great wife, and I'm very happy for them. I'm not like I resent the men who got to have kids because their wife took care of. It's just like it's a fact, man. Women give birth, they want to spend time with the kid. It's like, duh. I do not know how women in comedy or in TV have children. I don't get it. I could never even dream of it.
And there are really so few women in comedy relative to how many men there just are, period.
Well, I
Right?
think there's less. I think there's less famous ones because I think it's still harder. I think I was an anomaly because I was like a Joan Rivers in a way of like not really a woman, not really a man, like kind of like this weird in between, like just big mouth who men like to go see. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't a woman comic because I had a large fan base of straight guys too. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just kind of this thing, which by the way isn't great for your self-esteem, but it's great for ticket sales because the men buy the tickets, you know? So
Right.
I didn't set out to be that, but I was a badass, so men like that. Um, so I think I was this weird, like kind of on their own person who people hired and didn't consider putting a woman on the show. Like I was just like, oh yeah, she's not a woman, she's not a man, she's just cool. She's just cool. So I didn't care how I was selling the tickets. I mean, I was just being quote unquote myself. And
Right. So
obviously that's part of you, but 10% of you. The 90% that cries at every freaking thing on TV, that's not on that stage.
right, right,
But that's
right.
why on the podcast now, I don't freaking lead with that because I could just make fun of those two guys. I mean, come on. I'm the best, other than Rickles, I consider myself the best insult comic. Look, I could go on and make fun of these two straighties. Yes, we do banter and have fun and make fun of each other, but that would be easy because I did it for 30 years and it wasn't, it was fun, but and what I got away with was amazing. But then you go, oh, that's not fulfilling to what I want to do now. I want to
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
connect.
Yeah. It is so interesting that you wanted that the goal was really to connect that whole time. And you were connecting in one way, but
One
not
way.
the real you connecting in that
Yeah.
other genuine, solid, really foundational way.
Yeah, and I've become like literally that person. Like I was in a Bed Bath and Beyond the other day using my 20% off coupons, and which is the best thing ever. And I the woman behind the counter goes, "Oh my God, I love your hair." And I go, "Thank you." And I said something else. I forget what. So it was like maybe 10 sentences back and forth. And I was walking out with my friend and I go, oh my God, have I become that old lady who just talks to everyone? And she goes, no, she like started it. So you're allowed to like, so I go, but that felt like a connection.
Yeah.
It felt like, oh my God, like in the past, I would have just rushed through. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, thank you. Da, 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 da. Blah, blah, blah. Not mean, but just like, I got things to do. This is what's good about me now. What the hell do I have to do?
Yeah.
I sit around. I enjoy my life. So I go, even connecting on that weird little level is kind of cool.
I like those little connections personally. I mean,
Yeah.
I like the deeper connections more to me, like the real connection. That's what my whole show is about, is I'm always trying to really connect and get to know the real person in an authentic
Sure.
way and like get the
Yeah.
facade, get beyond the facade. But I also find that the more, and so you said I'm going to be the old lady who, I never associated this with an old lady, but maybe the older I'm getting, the more I enjoy those little Bed Bath and Beyond interactions too. Like they're
Yes.
fun. Why not? Right? Like, why
Oh my
not
God.
connect with everybody you come into
Right.
contact with?
We need to hashtag Bed Bath and Beyond connections, and then I'll get more 20% off coupons in the mail, as if I don't have 50 in my car right now. But yeah,
Exactly.
I like those moments. Like I literally, the only place I don't like connect, you'll laugh. I I love going to the cemetery that my father's buried in, and now my mom, she passed like 2 months ago. And so I love, it's a very sweet little cute old fashioned cemetery. And I always found it very peaceful, even when I didn't know anyone in it. So that's the one place I'm like, I really don't, oh, please excuse my landline. That's how you could tell I moved into an old person's house when you still have a landline.
I have a landline and I talk about getting, I got roasted for it when I was speaking at this conference called Podcast Movement last year when everything was virtual. And I was talking about how when I interview people, if it's a phoner only, because I was a journalist before this, right? So then I would always use my landline. And like in the comments, everybody started cracking up. They were like, landline? I'll have to go to my Nana's house to get a landline. You know?
It's true. That's what, it's so funny because I will never get that disconnected because that phone is just in that same phone number of my childhood. But anyway, so that's the one place in the cemetery that I don't want to talk to anyone. And I noticed last year, no, not during COVID, but right before, there was this woman at the cemetery and she was clearly in a lot of grief because she was there literally every day. She would lay on her mother's grave. She recognizes me. I'm not really recognizable anymore, except, by the way, I found out at cemeteries and hospitals, dead or almost dead people love me. And I'm like, I don't even know why. Like every time I'm at a hospital, they're just like, oh my God, Lisa. I'm like, yeah. Hi. So at the cemetery.
So they recognize they recognize you from when you were on stage?
I guess so.
Okay,
They're like last week I went for a test at a hospital and the woman was like, no, I didn't say anything till after your test, but oh my God, I was supposed to go see you at Foxwoods and I couldn't. I was so mad. I love you so much and all this. And I was cracking up because I did so much TV that, it caught on. But so anyway, so I'm at the cemetery and this woman who's in grief recognized me. Well, then I can't go to see my father's grave anymore because every time I go, she wants to talk. Then COVID starts. She wants to talk really up close. And I asked every compassionate friend of mine, I mean, every one of them, I said, how can I tell her this is a place where I need to be left alone? And they go, you can't. This is like, woman is so in grief. I think you just have to roll with this one. So when I started going back after my mom passed, I'm like, don't see her anymore. And I hope that it means she got help for the grief because that was extreme. Like I go through the grieving process big time. Like I'm really open to feelings now that I put off before, but that's the one place I don't like to connect with anyone. So, but every place else, I'm like thrilled if people come up or whatever. It's fun.
But that is that one place. Everybody's going through their own thing. Like it's not, it's really not a social setting.
Yeah.
Right?
I was like, what should I use? And I went to compassion because I took a workshop once where the woman said, honestly, the way out of any bad feeling is gratitude and compassion. They're your two abracadabras. And I'm like, wow. Like last week I had an attack of scarcity mindset. And that's just from growing up with parents who grew up in the Depression and their parents before that. I mean, it's generational stuff, right?
Sure.
So I had this huge attack of scarcity. And I literally am like reading and searching online for articles about scarcity and how do I get out of it? Because I didn't have time to order a book and there's no book on it and all this stuff. And it really, the one thing it said was write down a gratitude thing. And I'm not great at gratitude. And I was like, oh my God, it worked. Because you're like, I'm
Yes.
grateful I have a roof over my head.
Yeah.
I'm grateful my money's not stolen by Madoff. I'm grateful that I have food in the fridge. So boy, it's interesting. Compassion and gratitude really are healers.
For sure. And gratitude is like specifically, it automatically creates that abundance mindset, which it is
Yeah.
amazing. How it works is very
Yeah.
powerful. So, all right, what is your relationship status now? What is going on? So you are not
Yeah,
dating
no,
anybody?
it's interesting because I think a lot of my codependence, like when I was 12, I had my first boyfriend, very innocent. Like, and also, like, I always, a friend of mine has a joke about his love life where he goes, my horror period was shorter than Mother Teresa's. You know, we all had our little hoary period, but it wasn't, mine wasn't until my 40s, and it was very short too. And I joke about it on stage a lot, but it was much exaggerated. So I had a little boyfriend when I was 12. And like, I just think because I got attention with, I didn't have to have sex. Like, I was a late bloomer. I don't think I lost my virginity until I was like 20 something. I was just one of these girls who was like, oh, we don't do that. I was Catholic school. Oh my God. So I think what happened was I said, I need to not date because I was always kind of picking the wrong guys. And at 40, I said, look, I really need to work on why I can't be alone. So I went to this codependency rehab program at Caron Foundation, which is this great drug and alcohol rehab in Pennsylvania. But they have a codependency week that literally operates 52 weeks a year because they know codependency is the root of all addiction. So I go to this thing and it's super scary. And after that, I took a year off from any date, no nothing. But I noticed I was white knuckling it through the holidays. I said, okay, I need another 6 months to go through another set of holidays where I'm not white knuckling, where it's fun, where it's peaceful. So then I decided I was ready to date. And I was lucky enough that the guy I met was Jimmy, who I married. Total gentleman, great guy, should have been just friends. We're still friends now. I went to his wedding, to his new wife. It was a blast. And I go, God, Jimmy, weddings are fun when I don't have to get married. And I just have never felt, my sister-in-law said to me a few years ago, she goes, I've never seen anybody better at being single than you. And I think because I never had it. And I didn't realize the love of family and friends is enough. And also, I think menopause saved me because I don't have any sexual feelings or desire at all. And I'm like, oh my God, if I don't have that, this is very interesting how I'm not compelled to date at all. Like, there's no interest. So I think, yes, maybe eventually it'll be something I'm interested in, but right now it just feels peace. And that's very interesting that I didn't. So for the last, 7 years, I've been just nailing life. And I think it's because it's not a compulsion. I got that out of my life as an addiction. So maybe if something would happen, it'd just be a natural thing,
Right. And then you could start a fresh relationship with none of the old tendencies or behaviors that you used your whole life when you were in relationships.
Exactly. Because I was definitely most of the problem. First of all, my picker was off. I was picking the wrong type. I always felt I had to earn it. Just like with comedy, you have to earn it, earn that attention. And I'm happy to say the last bad guy, and of course he wasn't all bad. Nobody's all bad or all good except, narcissists and sociopaths. But I mean, the last bad guy was when I was 40, after that, right before that codependency workshop. And I'm like, wow, it's pretty effing good to go this long without a really horribly picked human. And again, that's why I'm always so proud of me and Jimmy being friends. Because I'm like, oh my God, like, I didn't pick a douchebag. I really picked a nice guy who I should have had 5 dates with and then been friends with, which ended up happening anyway.
So why didn't you have 5 dates and become friends? You decide to get what happened?
Oh, because, I just at the time felt I needed this stability and I needed something. And I think comedy was becoming really hard as far as like keeping on TV and keeping up these things and all that. And I was like, I think it was just something I grabbed onto and didn't have the self-awareness to go, oh, this isn't right for me, you know? So there
Yeah.
was still that neediness there.
Well, I think it's great that you chose somebody who is so good for you emotionally, even if not
Yes,
romantically.
I know.
That's
Because
a step up.
honestly, we call him a bless your heart guy, bless his heart guy. Oh, Jimmy, bless his heart. Like he's just a mensch. He's like a big Italian teddy bear type who's a good person. And again, that's really important, man. That was a big step to not be with somebody who was either using me or I felt was using me or was just, some sort of an addict or whatever. And
Yeah.
somebody I was trying to fix. Like I always pick guys I was trying to fix. And I used to pick friends I wanted to fix. And now I'm like, oh, I don't have any friends right now since COVID because I got rid of a few during COVID because I saw my pattern. There's no one in my life who needs me more than I need them. But if they do, then I have to examine it and say, why am I still in it? Is it that I have that need to fix and help? Then I have to adjust who I am in the relationship. It's not their job to point it out to me, it's mine. So even with the podcast with Nick and Bo, I'm like, okay, they don't technically need me more than I need them. Yes, it's great to have me on the show. But if I find I'm trying to fix their comedy without them asking or fix the podcast without them asking, no, step back. That's my job to step back because that compulsion never works. And then you're unequal. Everyone hates each other and it explodes. So
Yeah.
it's no good.
Congratulations on your level of self awareness. You've got,
Dude,
yeah.
25 years of therapy and a lot of life coaching courses really helps.
Yeah, yeah, I
I
can see. I
mean,
can hear it in your terminology too. That there's a
yeah.
lot that you've done a lot of it.
Oh my God, my current shrink is like, she goes, I'm glad you came to me because you could outsmart so many therapists because of what you have learned over the years. I'm like, yeah. So that's why I have to be with somebody who just is really a badass, who just is like calls me on everything, which I hate. And I get mad, but I'm like, she's right. Hate her, but she's right.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so so we're going to close in a few minutes. I'd like to ask you one of my favorite questions, and then I just want to do like maybe a quick few minutes of lighter questions. So we'll do
Sure,
that.
whatever you want.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, this is great. By the way, P.S. I just want to say, as a person who absolutely abhors small talk, this has been fantastic. So a little small talk at the end is welcome. I am the worst person at a party because I want to go deep all the time. So thank you for being that type of, I can't, like I cannot with the small talk. So thank you.
I appreciate that a lot. Thank you for giving me the feedback too, because I don't always know
Oh,
how the other person feels, right? So I feel like maybe I'm sensing you a little bit, but I don't necessarily know what you're feeling, what you're
sure.
thinking. So it's good to
Right.
hear.
Oh my God, it's great.
Small talk. So it's interesting because I can do small talk that's about things that seem small, but that I might be passionate about. So, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the only kind of small talk I like. I am not interested in talking about weather or traffic or anything like that. I'm not interested in the same old questions. But, like, if you want to talk about the TV shows you're into, that's
Oh my
kind of
God.
small
You
talk.
wanna you wanna talk Schitt's Creek or Handmaid's Tale? I am all about it. But wait, it's not small talk though, because I think there could be big talk even over small things. So I could take the weather and I could make you and me and you could have a big talk about that because it's about seasonal disorder where you feel like you're going to kill yourself because the sun isn't out, or it's about like, oh my God, I'm letting weather affect me in a certain way emotionally, and isn't it interesting? And like we get into some
That's
shit.
true. That's
So
right. Because you could totally
I don't
turn it
think
into
we,
like a
hell
psychological
yeah,
conversation.
I
Okay,
could take
okay.
I could take this mug which says Johnny Lawrence from Cobra Kai's motto, strike first, strike hard, no mercy. And we could talk about how deep that character is because he's working on himself and there's no such thing as evil.
Stop.
You know?
We could have spent the whole hour talking about Johnny
Yes.
Lawrence. Like,
Oh my
yes,
God, my hero. He's me. He's me. He's redemption story. And also we could talk about this that my grandmother made when she was in the daycare center when she was old and how I've held on to it for 30 years. So I think you and I, we can make anything deep, honey.
Yes, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. So it takes two people in small talk for it to not
there
be
you
suffering.
go.
Yeah, that's what it's about.
Yes, there you go.
I sort of miss the fact, I sort of regret the fact that we didn't get into Cobra Kai, but we'll have to save that for another conversation.
Another time.
I had Miguel on. He was, he plays, Xolo
sweet.
Maridueña, who
Yes,
plays
of course,
Miguel,
of course.
Johnny's mentee, I guess you could say.
Best show ever. Well, someday call my phone number, which you have, and it says literally, "Hey, it's Lisa. I can't talk to you because I'm busy watching Cobra Kai." Like literally obsessed. And I think it just hits that emotional place in me of this guy who's trying so hard to be understood.
Yeah.
And yes, all the other stuff's great, but Billy
it's
Zabka
all about Billy Zabka. He gets all the
person.
best lines. The entire series to me is about Johnny. Like that, I know that he's
100%.
really, but to me, I'm like, more Johnny. And the first season when it was all Johnny's ridiculousness.
Yeah.
The best.
And his political incorrectness cracks me up because he's just trying to do the right thing, but doesn't know how, kind of how I always feel. You know, like I'll always say something wrong. Like, even though I'm like woke now, I will always say something wrong and I have to apologize. Even here, when I said I'm being a big puss, I'm like, oh, that's dehumanizing to the woman's body. Like I'll always F up like Johnny Lawrence, but at least we know when we F up now.
Yeah, that's a big difference that you know it when you say it and you do it or whatever, you apologize.
Yes.
But Johnny, the best. So, okay, that'll be our conversation for another time. Okay, but before the little questions, one last deep question, which is, what's the image people tend to have of you? Like, who do they think you are and how is that different from who you really are?
Well, I mean, again, you know, I think they take that 10% that I used to put on stage and think that's everything. But I know I can't control that, and that's okay. I could just show them in the interactions that I have that other 90%. So like the women at the hospital who would recognize me, if they said, hey, can you call my husband on my cell phone and call him a dick or whatever, I totally would do it because I'm nice. So you don't do that out of meanness to the husband. You do it because you're nice to the wife. So you just have to show people who you are just by being, it's not downplaying your humor, but it's going, oh, there's more to me. So I have no choice but to show that now. So I think it's also where they wouldn't know you have feelings, where you are kind of like sad sometimes and you get depressed and that you're not always funny. And I think just showing by example and showing them how you live, that you're not just that one dimension, because no one really is. And then you start going, oh my God, that person doesn't have one dimension either. You know, because sometimes you look at other comics or actors and go, I bet they're exactly like that all the time. Oh, we're all freaking dented. This is a friend of mine once said, we're all dented cans and we're all just trying to bang the dents out. Some of us harder than others. 25 years of therapy. Okay.
Wait, Lisa divulges a lot more in part 2. Make sure you're subscribed to Really Famous, tap the subscribe button, and then tap the notifications bell, and you will be notified as soon as it's ready. I usually drop new interviews with celebrities 3 times a week now. It's usually Fridays, Sundays, and Tuesdays. If you like this video, please tap the like button and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think about our talk, about Lisa, about me, about Really Famous, who you'd like to see on Really Famous. Whatever, drop a comment. I do read them. I'm Kara. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.